Hello, I'm Bryan Whaley. I serve as CEO for the Iowa Cattlemen's Association, and happy to have you tune in and join us today. The Iowa Cattlemen's Association is fortunate enough to be joined today by Colin Woodall, CEO for the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, and Ethan Lane is the Senior Vice President for Government Affairs in the DC office for NCBA as well. So welcome. Thank you for being a part of our show today.
Hey, thanks for having us. Great to be here.
All right. So one of the unique things with our partnership with NCBA is we've been fortunate for the past few years, at least as long as I've been in this role, to have you come out, visit Iowa, visit our producers across the state, engage in conversations, see some different practices and operations and industry and in all aspects of the supply chain. So we've been very fortunate to have that. And so this year, we're wrapping up about a 4 or 5 day tour of Iowa with the both of you. And we're very happy that they took the time to do that. Very appreciative of that. We hope we've been good hosts and been able to show you different aspects of what happens in Iowa. So that's how we're going to kind of have our conversation today to start, to give everybody a flavor of some of the things they've seen while they've been here in Iowa. So Colin, I'm going to start with you. You get the first question, and we'll kind of start just kind of broad, big picture right now. As you think about the industry from your seat at the national level with the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, what do you see are some big things that our Iowa producers really need to be paying attention to, things that are going really well within our industry, or things that we need to be paying attention to in the future?
One of the things we've talked a lot about here since being in Iowa is how great demand is. We have a 40-year high in demand for our product, and that's a function of a lot of the great work that's being done by Iowa producers. The quality is superb. The consumer loves what we're serving them, and as such, they want more. So I think one of the things that we really wanted to talk about this week was, one, to take a victory lap as an industry, to be able to pat ourselves on the back for all the great work we've done together in putting out this high quality beef, building this demand, but also knowing that we can't rest on our laurels. We have to continue to make the investment in genetics. We have to continue to look at new production methods. We have to make sure that everybody's BQA certified, so that way we can continue to make our product even better. You know, we're talking to people on this trip who are getting 87% of their cattle graded prime. That's amazing. Amazing work. And it's one of the reasons why we are here. But every time we have that consumer that is going and buying our beef, they are looking for that consistent high quality product. And we have to make sure we're doing everything we can to continue to deliver. And while we're focusing on our efforts to make that happen, we also have to keep in mind there's a lot of stuff in Washington, D.C. that tries to make it harder on us. And that's one of the reasons why NCBA exists, is to make sure that we are lessening that regulatory burden, making sure that Washington, D.C. is not making life any harder than they already are for producers here in Iowa and around the country.
Yeah, well, one of the things we've talked about with, at least with our Department of Ag and Land Stewardship, is we've been using the word having the freedom to operate, right? Free to operate, you know, and we as stewards of the land, we try to do the best that we can, and stewards of the industry as well. So we, yes, and demand is really key, and we tried to showcase some of those things that were happening, and I'm glad you pointed those out. Ethan, similar question to you. Colin just mentioned things that are happening in D.C. From a policy and advocacy perspective, what are some of those things that you guys are working on in D.C. that are going to be really meaningful, that our Iowa producers need to know, that could really make an impact on their operations?
Well, I think anyone working in American agriculture right now knows that the cattle industry story is very different than the story in the rest of agriculture. And I think that's one of the really important messages we were carrying this week here in Iowa, and what we're hearing back from producers. You know, the rest of agriculture is in a very different spot in their cycle. They're hurting. They're talking to Washington about the need for more resources, more financial support on top of the $22 billion that's been sort of dedicated to that effort over the last 14 months. Meanwhile, we're looking for less of Washington in the cattle industry. We're still really trying to work with the Trump administration to hold them to a lot of their commitments on deregulating, on removing the burden of federal regulation from producers' lives, on ensuring that as we see policy that affects agriculture move through Congress right now, obviously Chairman G.T. Thompson is working to advance his kind of finishing bill on the remaining items of the farm bill across the finish line, making sure that that package does what producers need it to do, addresses some of those outstanding concerns, things like Proposition 12. We make the mistake sometimes in animal agriculture of thinking that's a pork industry issue, but certainly I think we had a lot of conversations this week about how those animal rights activists and folks, even some Republicans that are supportive of that effort, aren't just coming for the hog industry. They're looking right down the pipe at the cattlemen right after that. And a lot of what we saw this week is producers that are out innovating. They're growing demand by making a better product, by improving genetics, by improving feeding regimens. And we saw some really cool stuff this week. We have to make sure we're defending against people in Washington trying to help, right? Trying to assist, trying to break things so that they can fix them. What we need is Washington out of our way so that the folks we were with this week can continue to do what Colin was talking about and grow that beef demand. So I think that's kind of the message that we're carrying is, we want to turn wrenches, we want to fix those issues, but boy, right now it's pretty easy to look at that mess in Washington and say, how do we get less of what you're doing there and more of what's happening around here in Iowa?
Yeah, most definitely. Thank you. And one of the unique things that we do is, and Ethan has made the comment to me, is we try to put them in front of some of our producers while they're here. And the conversations that they're able to have, we've had at least, 3 or 4 different times where you had the opportunity to engage in dialogue back and forth with our producers, really in a Q&A format. So as you think about some of those conversations you've had this week, any themes coming out that you feel are really impactful? I know one of the things we've talked about numerous times is how NCBA has to kind of navigate the waters, understanding that operations are different. The cattle industry is different across the country and how we operate. So maybe talk just a little bit about how you do that as for our Iowa producers who are really adamant and passionate about one or two things, and how that is something we may think is really important may impact the industry in another part of the country.
There's a lot of misinformation out there, Bryan, on who NCBA is, who we represent, what we do. And one of the best ways to correct that misinformation is actually to get in front of producers, those who have the questions. And that's simply why we are here this week. We're not here to show off. We're not here to just give presentations. We're actually here to listen, because as a national trade association that has members in all 50 states, we know that what you're doing here in Iowa is different on both sides of the state. Mm-hmm. It is definitely different from what you see in other states around the country. And for us to be an effective advocate for our membership and for this industry, we have to know where those challenges are and how the actions that we take and the way we engage impacts producers here in Iowa versus producers in Hawaii, for example. And so taking advantage of this to get out, answer those questions, the tough questions on who does NCBA represent? What do we really do? What does the checkoff do? Has been one really useful for us to just say what's hot right now. What are people hearing on social media or in the coffee shop among their friends? And how can we make sure that we correct that record? But it also allows us to take back to Denver and to Washington, D.C., those areas that we probably need to spend a little bit more time talking about in our own social media, in our own communications vehicles. So that way we can take every opportunity possible to make sure people understand what we're about. And what we're about is the producers. And that is not always talked about. We've been around since 1898. We are the oldest and largest national trade association representing cattle producers. And it's cow-calf producers that are the focus of this association, along with feeders, along with seed stock, along with backgrounders and stockers. Those every day who are getting their boots dirty, those are the people that NCBA is focused on, because they are the heart of this industry. They're the heart of this association. And that consumer is not going to be able to enjoy that great steak unless the producers here in Iowa are doing good. So for us to come out, listen, take some notes home, be able to really see how things work will help both of us do our jobs that much better in being a good representative of the industry as a whole.
Thank you. We appreciate that comment. Ethan, how do you navigate some of these challenges when you're in DC lobbying on behalf of the producers, which is what you guys, NCBA is a grassroots organization. We've talked many times this week about your policy book, and how that guides your direction. So how do you navigate some of those things as you go through your process of lobbying for your NCBA?
Sure. We're blessed to have a broad national structure, 44 state affiliate organizations, all of them with their own flavor, their own business models, right, in their various versions of the cattle industry in their parts of the world. All of that input comes into my policy book and allows us to advocate for consensus policies that producers have weighed in on, 180,000 from coast to coast. Whether you're an NCBA member or not, if you're a member of ICA, you're a member of one of these other state affiliates, you're participating in making sure our policy really represents those views. Iowa does occupy a unique role in that process. You guys raise cattle differently here. You feed cattle differently here. It's one of my favorite places in the country to come because I've never had a bad steak in this state. And when you go around this state and you talk to producers, you see the same thing you see in a lot of other parts of the country. And that's folks that are too busy to be on the internet all day. They're busy growing their businesses. They're putting in new barns, right? They're out innovating. They're dealing with weather. They're traveling across the state to get the genetics that they need, or to find, replacements, or do whatever it is they're doing that day. And they're not farming clicks on the internet. So dispelling that bad information, both here and in Washington, so that as members of Congress are traveling back and forth, they're talking to us in Washington, they're talking to you guys here, they're getting the real information rather than, whatever somebody dressing up like a cowboy on the internet is saying today, or trying to drive division or start a fight in the industry. It's helpful to have that consensus policy where we can say, look, the producers of this industry feel like this on, any particular issue. Right now in Iowa, you can't go very far without hearing about CRP. That's an issue that's not getting a lot of attention at the national level at the moment. So you can feel that need from producers here because of competition for land, because of some of the problems with managing under those contracts bubbling up. That's going to become a national issue because Iowa producers are bringing that to the table. ICA is driving that conversation, and you hear it from your members around the state as we've traveled around. That's what that engagement looks like, because we know that as we take these positions from Iowa, we interface them with other producers in other parts of the country that haven't always agreed on CRP, and drive home a consensus message in Washington. We can change how those programs work. Now we replicate that about 100 times over on other issues that we're wrestling with, and we've got something, and I think that's a big part of that. And it's making sure that they're getting some feedback on how their representatives are representing them, so that there's that real 360 review process, right? How do you think my member is representing? I've had more questions about that this week. How's so-and-so doing? Are you hearing from Zach Nunn? Are you hearing from Randy Feenstra? And yes, we talk to them constantly, but that's all part of this process. Put eyes on those operations, hear from the producers, and you can bridge that gap in Washington. We will get a better result because we're operating differently right now. We're not asking Washington for money. It gives us some room to ask for some other things.
Yeah, we appreciate that. And the one thing that I think was really good that I think came out loud and clear as you were sharing about some of those things is just the conversations that you have out in DC when you're having those. One of the things you're making sure and asking, do you know how, in this case, Iowa stands on that position?
Yeah.
And making sure that we're being a good partner with our congressional people and with agencies and all those individuals you work with. And just like, we all know that every state has different policies. We may not always agree with some of the things that NCBA has in their policy book. And so then we work through that, right? But we still have that unique partnership. We want to come to the table. And we have a voice. Right. And you mentioned CRP, and we're very appreciative of the opportunity to be the lead on that, working with the committee to kind of help design that new plan. So I just want to finish up today, and I just want to ask both Colin and Ethan, as you've toured the state, we have seen the Iowa State Veterinary Diagnostic Lab, the meat lab. We've talked about research, whether it's CRP or a beef nutrition research and trials that they've done. We've seen innovative practices. We even saw an old meat processing facility, Maxwell Custom Meats in Des Moines, downtown Des Moines, even and ended up. Did some visits in eastern Iowa, some cattle operations, had some visits with producers, and ending the week with a tour of Upper Iowa beef as well. So as you think about, reflect on the week, what is one thing that you're going to take away from this week that was influential in helping you understand a little bit about Iowa, or just kind of surprised you or amazed you what's all happening here in our state?
I think the biggest thing is If you think you know what the cattle business is in Iowa, you don't. You need to show up and you need to see it firsthand. And that really is kind of my biggest takeaway. And I've been here before, but I've only seen portions. I've been able to be exposed to so much more this trip, and everywhere from the science that Mickles Farm is utilizing, the data to just really dial in the quality of their product was amazing. And the work that Ross and his team are doing was fascinating. But also to come out here and see what these farmer feeders are doing to continue to take advantage of the land as it exists, to be able to utilize the cattle ranching side, the farming side, and the corn producing side to be able to make the most of great resources here in Iowa. It's fascinating. And also to understand the role that Iowa State plays in not only agriculture here in Iowa, but nationally. That all of that rolls together, I think, for me to be able to walk away and say there's great things here. And as a national industry, we have to have you as Iowa and Iowa producers to be successful, because you guys are just absolutely key to our national success. And go back to one of my previous comments. The consumer expects that high quality eating experience every time they buy beef in the retail meat case, and they're going to only want it to get better. And I think with all the work being done here in Iowa, we're going to be able to make that happen. You also have mentioned twice so far the partnership between NCBA and ICA. And that's something that I really want to drill in, because a lot of times there's this component, NCBA dictates everything and the states just have to go do their thing. That's not the case. It is just the opposite. The states tell us what to do. And that's how we have a powerful organization, a successful organization. And so in order for NCBA to continue to be effective, Iowa Cattlemen's Association has to continue to be effective. And we're glad we're here to witness it, see it, and do everything we can to help move it forward.
Thank you. Ethan, what were some of your highlights this week?
We talk in my office in DC about all different kinds of things going on in the cattle industry, new techniques, new practices, and coming to a state like Iowa where it's not conceptual. People are putting that stuff on the ground. I got to see it. I've been lucky to be on a tour like this with you the last couple of years. We've covered a lot of ground. I doubled back to a few places I had burgers in the past that checked in, the quality's still there. It was cool to see some of those concepts that we talk about, programs that we've worked on funding for being applied on the ground. And whether, like Colin said, some of those innovative feeding practices, some of the barn construction and some of the cool things that are happening there. That custom exempt processing facility, and talking to that young man, 27 years old, starting that business, about the challenges he's running into, the opportunities that he sees in that space. And really seeing those younger producers stepping up and leading on these issues. They have opinions, they've got thoughts, they're upset about something, they're happy about something, and they're communicating, and they're coming up and talking to us about it, asking questions. That is really, really encouraging to see. We talk about generational transfer, we talk about what it takes to put those producers in the game. Iowa producers did not let us off the hook anywhere we went this week. What are you doing to make sure our kids have a business to take over or to start from scratch as a first generation producer? We didn't get 5 feet in the state without having that challenge put to us. And that just speaks to how this state and the cattle industry here isn't sitting back and trading on an inertia or the demand that we've built. They're trying to figure out how to double. And that is a really fun thing to be a part of. So it's sending me back to DC, energized to go tackle some issues, and excited to make our next trip back here the next time you invite us.
Well, great. Well, and we definitely would love to have you back. I want to just personally thank the both of you for taking time. I know it takes a lot of time away from other things that you need to be doing to make this trip, but obviously I was able to see firsthand how you engaged you were, the impact you were having in the conversations that you were having, and on both ways, both with individuals you were talking to, as well as how they were communicating with you. And I just think it's so very important for our producers to understand kind of what happens, and that NCBA is here, and we have a good relationship. We work with them on a regular basis, and they are very supportive. So thank you both for taking the time this week. It's been a great trip throughout the state. I know I get to do it on a regular basis and get to work with all of our great producers across the state, but it was great to showcase it to you two during the week. So thank you very much for taking the time. I know this is a not common that I get the two of you in the same state or in the state at the same time, but very appreciative of the time that you took this week. So thank you very much.
Thanks for having us, Bryan.
You bet.
You
Thank
bet.
you.